Hello and welcome to the Cross Reference. Today we have Nick Brothers in the studio. He's my special guest on the Cross Reference. Good to have you with us, Nick.
Good to be here.
Nick's a political science major here at Missouri Western State University. You're also a student activist, I should say.
Yes, I think that's fair.
Political activist. First of all, let's get it right straight out. I'm working with the Tea Party and you're working with the Occupy people.
Right.
I think the audience needs to know that. You're a little bit country and I'm a little bit rock and roll.
Yes,
so
that's right.
So I just wanted to get that out of the way first of all. We do have some common ground, though, I think we can agree on. I think I've heard you in another interview with Charlene DeVino, where you showed a little disappointment in what was going on in the president administration.
Oh, yeah.
And I think we share that in common, and I think many students on campus are in that same boat. Basically, we have less than a year before we have another presidential election. What do you see as the first problem that is going to happen on campus as far as what do we have to overcome as far as the first hurdle to get these students ready to vote?
Apathy. Apathy is #1 hurdle always in any American election. It has been for years. It's not a student problem, although students do have that problem. And, you know, I don't want to beat up too hard, but I was shocked a little by the editorial 2 weeks ago, and that's why I responded to it in the Griffin News. That seemed to excuse, to some extent, that apathy. And I think if students are going to continue to say that they have the right to vote, need the right to vote, as students 40 years ago did when they agitated to have that amendment to the Constitution, then they're going to have to prove they're worth it. And I think we can. I think that in 2008 we went a long way, you know, despite any personal disappointment with President Obama. The fact is, students got out in large numbers, more than they ever have before, not only to the polls, but to knock on doors, to make phone calls on President, then Senator Obama's behalf. And I'd like to see that continue. And, you know, we didn't see that in 2010 for a variety of different reasons. Midterms usually are not well attended by the general public in general, but that student drop-off was big, 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 and we can't have that again. You know, no matter if students want to, there's an effort to bring Ron Paul on campus. I signed that petition, even though I think Ron Paul's ideas are a little destructive, at least in my opinion, but he's an alternative viewpoint. And that's what, in general, I think both the Tea Party and Occupy Wall Street are about, that they're trying to bring alternative viewpoints into the political system.
Well, I know in my situation, I'm looking forward to educating students. I think that's key. I put it in my column. I really think educating yourself before you vote is part of the responsibility.
Oh, yeah.
I think far too many, and you can disagree with me, but I think far too many students just vote for whoever they think is going to win. And I don't think that's a real vote. I wish we could find out who was doing that, but I'd rather they stay home. Are you of that same opinion?
No, no. I am never in favor of someone staying home.
Okay.
If you are totally dissatisfied with the two main party choices, then there's always a third party. There is always even writing your own name in as a write-in candidate. Just vote. Just make sure that you got that complaint ticket, in my opinion. If you don't vote, you've no right to complain.
I agree with that one. If you're not registered to vote and you're not voting, then you have no grounds to complain. I've said that before myself. And I think that I think we are right in bringing anyone we can to the campus. Anyone we can. Rob Schaaf will be having his talks, and that's a very good thing for students to attend. He has his talks over by the cafeteria, and those are very good things for students to attend. There are other things they can do as far as we all know how to do research. Get on the internet, find out what's going on. We better know by now if we're going to be students. Now, I want to talk to you a bit. I put it in my column, and I want to give you an opportunity to talk about this. I don't know if you're familiar with this document at all. This is the Declaration for the Occupation of St. Joseph.
Yes, this was adopted by consensus by the group, and it's modeled pretty much off of one effort in New York City. I want to make it clear that the occupation of New York has not, to my knowledge, ever endorsed any set of demands, any even set of policy goals, even broad ones, let alone specifics. Because there is an idea within the movement, and I happen to agree with it right now, that we need to be asking questions instead of providing solutions. And I know especially the big corporate media, the punditry, the Beltway insider class, they want it, where are your demands, where are your solutions, where. Well, we've been asking where are the questions. They haven't been asking those questions for nigh on 50 years. The media as watchdog, that's gone away in this country, you know. So I'm even sympathetic to people who still continue to support Herman Cain, for instance, on the basis of it's just the media attacking them, they're just parasites. You know, a lot of them have become that when they should be watchdogs, when the good ones are watchdogs, and we still have some great media in this country, and I just wish everyone was paying attention to it.
Yeah. I do believe there is an error and a push to get Occupy on black and white.
Right.
Well, we're really trying to get you guys nailed down. Part of that, I honestly believe, is so the media then can attack whatever position you take. I mean, that'll happen to you. Once you take a position, someone will argue with you, I promise, because I'm the opinion columnist and I know these things. But I want to understand better. I mean, we've got a year. Is Occupy going to have ever those typical goals outlined of things that they want to do? I mean, or are they going to wait longer? I've heard you say, you know, and it's true, I agree with you, the changes we need are not going to come very fast. But is Occupy going to get together anytime? It seems like, I mean, I went to Washington, I saw the Occupy group there, and I interviewed them there. I've interviewed the Occupy group here.
And thank you for that.
Okay, but it seems a little disjointed. I'm hearing different stories in different cities. New York's got its own, I hesitate to use the word agenda because you guys don't have an agenda yet that I know of. You can correct me on that. But it seems a little disjointed.
Well,
is that by design still or not?
In my opinion, yeah, design might be the wrong word, but there's certainly a feeling within most local movements that we need to address local problems along with the larger systemic problems. Now, New York's going to remain, even after the raid yesterday morning in the wee hours, and probably because of, is going to remain the flagship occupation. But every occupation, whether it's St. Joseph or Kansas City, St. Louis, San Francisco, Oakland, Seattle, et cetera, Chicago, every major city, every medium-sized city has some sort of occupation. And they're going to have to try to identify local concerns because, first of all, you need the people on your side in any mass movement. And if you don't connect with local concerns, local issues, people are just going to tune out. They're just going to see you as yet another arm of the political class, yet another way to pass the buck around. And I think, you know, this document at least that's been circulated that we did adopt by consensus, you know, these are generalizations, but everything pretty much is happening in St. Joe. So, but there are things in St. Joe that we want to specifically address. We still, as many cities do, and many of the occupations are trying to address the homeless problem, what some people call economic refugees, those who have been shut out of the system, sometimes by their own admission, through their own fault, but oftentimes, many times, through no fault of their own.
And some are there by choice. Give me that. Some
that's, you know,
some love that lifestyle.
Some do. That's a very small percentage, though.
Okay.
I think that's an entire issue that I don't think we're here to parse out here, but that's part of what we are generalized and trying to advance, that people have been ignored. And many homeless people are people with mental problems,
Certainly.
with drug addiction problems, people who have been sidelined in the society for far too long. They have not gotten the care
Sure.
that,
I'll
you
agree
know,
with that.
Tolstoy talked about. We judge the society on how it treats its prisoners. Well, we've let these people, generally broadly, not all, but many homeless people, out of the world with no support.
I agree.
You know, and it's got to be tailored to their needs and to their wishes.
That happened a few years ago in St. Joseph, Missouri. We used to have a mental hospital here.
Right. Well, we still do.
But at one time, they just drastically reduced their numbers. They declared everyone as being manageable on their own.
Right.
Put them out into the street, gave them their medication. Some of them didn't take it.
Mm-hmm.
And it really has caused some problems, law enforcement-wise, vandalism-wise.
Oh, sure.
There was even, I was the 911 dispatcher at the time, there was some actual deaths in the street. People simply were not being taken care of.
Oh, yeah.
And that was a crime somebody's going to have to pay for someday, because I really think that was a bad deal. We did not take care of those people. We actually just let them go. And you're right, some of those are the remnants of that time period. There were a couple of things on here, and I'm not asking you to defend any part of this, because I don't know how familiar
I had
you
the
are.
twinkly hands on this. I had
Okay.
so
All right. Twinkly hands. What does twinkly hands mean now?
Well, just as part of the General Assembly process, what most occupations have adopted is it has its roots even before Occupy Wall Street and what called affinity groups, usually, and not to scare anyone, but anarchists and radicals.
No.
Oh my gosh!
So
but
those
people,
are not four-letter words.
No.
It's okay.
But as a direct democracy tool, because on a crowded street in a small enclosed area, you can't have people signaling aye or nay.
Mm-hmm.
And so this, in a General Assembly, means you are in support. This means that you do not favor it. Some GAs go with this, but we dispense with that locally here. And that also includes this hand signal as a point of interest, point of information, or inquiry to the person that is currently being recognized on the stack. And then this is a block. You know, and I pointed this out on a comment section to the editorial, the staff editorial 2 weeks ago. The idea of this movement being very sheep-like, as outright said by the accompanying cartoon. Everyone has and does have the ability to veto anything, and it can only be overturned in some places by. In New York, for a while at least, they did a 100% block.
Okay. So everybody gets a voice that way.
Everybody gets a voice.
Not a strict majority.
Exactly.
Very good.
It has to be a super majority to overturn a block in pretty much every occupation. But anyway, so I'm ready to defend anything on there.
I'm not asking you to defend. I want you to explain.
Okay.
It to
Well,
me.
either
in
way.
the media, we try to keep everything on a 7th grade level.
Right.
Okay. But there was a couple of things here that I really was lost. Now you're talking about corporations here. They have perpetuated colonialism at home and abroad, and I want you to talk about that. What does that mean?
Colonialism, there's an idea these days of what's called neo-colonialism. Basically that we are retaking through other means the possessions we used to have as colonies. Although technically the United States has never had what we have said as a colony, we've certainly had possessions across the world, the Philippines for one, that we have treated as colonies. Many countries in Latin America that we treated as colonies. And this is, you know, we might remember back to our History 140 here at Missouri Western if you've taken it, or many other history classes. But anyway, the idea that an empire sets up far-flung outposts to exploit through a mercantilist system the people, the land, the resources of that outpost. And I think the heart of this point in the Declaration here is that when we talk about the 99%, it's not just here in America, and this movement is beyond America. We on the October 15th Day of Solidarity, we had pictures from Taipei, Taiwan, from Tokyo, from Auckland, New Zealand, Sydney, Australia, Santiago, Chile, Madrid, Rome, London, Paris, all over the world. And when we talk about that, the 99%, we want to make sure, in general, that we do not denigrate or blame the 99% in other countries for the predicaments that have been caused by the 1% here in America. It's very easy to say, China's taken our jobs, China's taken our jobs, as if those people making $1 a day in a factory were somehow to blame, as if they had much of a choice but to survive that way. It's not the person, it's not the CEO in New York or Delaware. It's not his fault. It's that person in China, in Vietnam, in Taiwan, it's in Mexico, wherever it is, it's their fault somehow. Now that doesn't make any sense. That makes zero sense, in fact. But it's easy. It's easy to blame someone abroad, to always scapegoat. We've got a long tradition in this country of scapegoating other countries for our own problems, and that's going to the heart. Now, the colonialism here at home, that's a little trickier to explain, but my in seventh grade terms, as you said, but basically, it comes out of an idea that eventually, as we're seeing in China, as wages necessarily have to come up to avoid widespread discontent. I unfortunately, we're not seeing Occupy Tiananmen Square this time, as I'm sure a lot of us would have hoped. In fact, they've through the Great Firewall of China, they've actually banned the search engines from returning results on the word occupy in China. So there is that. But the idea that we will be here abroad, or when they are finished exploiting those abroad, they will turn around and exploit us here using the same colonial style tactics, and people will sometimes be forced to accept it, just like they've been forced to accept $1 a day in China. It's not out of the realm of possibility that in 10 years people might take $1 a day jobs. If that's what it takes to feed your family, would you?
Yeah, if that will do it.
But in the past,
everything's got to fall apart first. I mean, everything's got to come down in price before I can feed a family on $1 a day.
Well, there's that.
Yeah, everything has to fall
and
apart first.
There's all sorts of interconnected issues here, and global food prices, the inflation of that's tied up in Wall Street.
You sent me that leak.
Yes,
and I did look at it.
Good.
I did look at it.
What they've done, Wall Street did with mortgage-backed securities, they're doing with commodities. That means grain. That means corn. Well, corn is grain, but anyway, livestock, etc. They are doing the same thing, and now what they did to homes, now it's going to be grocery stores, our pantries.
They've used the military, the companies again, the corporations have used the military and police force to prevent freedom of the press. How is that happening?
That happened yesterday.
Okay.
And
give me an example.
That happened yesterday in New York City. The militarized police force of NYPD, one of the most heavily militarized force in the country, perhaps the world outside of a police state dictatorship, arrested 20 journalists claiming that they were being arrested for their own safety.
Oh, wow.
Do you really think that's right? And we now have the information that the cities that did these raids over the past 5 days, starting in St. Louis, and then Denver, Portland, Oakland again, and then culminating in New York City, although there's others, Albany. But anyway, we now know that they coordinated those raids together and brought in FBI and Homeland Security advisors to help coordinate that. And one of the federal advisors pieces of advice to all these cities was, do it at a time where there will not be reporters there, and make sure that those that are there for whatever reason, because they're like Josh Harkinson, a reporter from Mother Jones, has been great about covering Occupy Wall Street. They're almost 24/7. They even had a tent in Zuccotti Park, although he didn't stay full time, but he had it available. Anyway, so why didn't they want reporters there? Why exactly
for
did
their
they?
own good, for their own
right,
safety.
for their own safety is what they
But
say
you've got
now.
to admit, the Occupy things in a couple of situations have gotten out of hand.
Well, specifically where?
I've heard of a shooting in Oakland. Now, not here, of course. We had no violence at all here, and I don't want to imply that, because you're not a violent group here. That's what I'm saying. It seems a little disjointed. There are factions that are more aggressive, more violent than others.
Well, I want to be careful when we're talking about a shooting near the occupation site.
Okay.
And we unfortunately saw an occupier, a vet, commit suicide in Burlington, Vermont, within the camp. And we saw there was alleged
right.
instance of sexual assault in Zuccotti Park by basically people who are going to gravitate towards situations where they feel they can remain hidden, unseen. But you know what? If it wasn't an occupation site, it would have been something else.
Well,
and I want to
these
stress,
things can happen, because I know even at the Tea Party there was unfortunate incidents that happened in Washington, D.C. There was unfortunate incidences that
and
happened.
I'm not trying to downplay any violence, but I want to stress that this was not an occupier shooting a police officer. This was not an occupier shooting a CEO, a business. These occupation sites have necessarily taken in, at some points, the homeless, as I've said, people who are sometimes on the margins of society. And sometimes that's going to have consequences. They're going to bring their regular lives into the occupation life.
Okay.
And
all right, so in no way, none of these occupations groups are endorsing social unrest.
no, not at all. They're endorsing civil disobedience.
Okay.
And if that is social unrest, then we need to tear down any posters or quotes by Gandhi, by Dr. King. We need to remove Henry David Thoreau from our libraries.
Okay, make that connection for us, though.
Civil disobedience, tactics of non-compliance, of boycott. There's the strategy basically is to commit nonviolent acts that are generally and necessarily against the law in order to provoke a response by authorities. And when you do that, you show what the authorities are really about. What harm is there when 20 people, like in Lincoln, Nebraska, or I'm sorry, Omaha, Nebraska, sat down and in a Bank of America branch, just sat down and refused to move. There is no violence inherent in that action. There is nothing threatening about that action. And those are the kind of tactics that civil disobedience wants to, the strategy wants to employ. When Gandhi or Dr. King marched, when people sat in lunch counters and refused to move at segregated lunch counters, refused to move from the back of the bus, refused to move or refused to use bus services as parts of boycott. And those aren't violent acts. Those are only violent acts in the minds of people who perceive any threat to their power as violence.
Okay. Hey, this can be part one.
Okay.
I'd like to have you back. I'd like to talk to you many times over this next year.
Okay,
Because
we
I
can do
think
that.
this is one way that students can learn about what's the social issues, what's the political issues, and where they need to be in this next election. I want to thank you for being here very much.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. I really appreciate it.